one life, for crying out loud. You might as well just give it all you got.
The Deej, Dan Jourdan.
Your daily dose of reality. Your daily dose of the Deej.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I need my daily dose of Deej.
I make the news. I don't watch the news. I'm a leader.
The Sales Energizer, Dan Jourdan.
Listen, don't worry how to sell, baby. Worry about why people buy. And it's fun.
You don't need a 5-hour energy. All you need is the Sales Energizer.
Just when I think it's not going to be as fun as the one before, each one gets successfully better. Success. What's the word I'm looking for? What's it going to take to get you in this cocktail, huh?
And now, please welcome the Sales Energizer, Dan Jourdan.
Boom! That's exactly it. Do that. Let's do that.
Arms in the air. Arms in the air.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. If that doesn't get you pumped up, I don't know what does.
Yeah, the voice of some guy said, please welcome the Sales Energizer, Dan Jourdan. But as you can see, the Sales Energizer is not on the screen. And ladies and gentlemen, car buying public, we have a special guest host today, and you're in for a treat. This man is the one and only Crispin Cruz. How are we doing there in front of the skyscrapers, Chris?
Thanks. Doing well. Doing well. Thank you. Thank you so much. I've got Joe Miller with us today. Talk about sales guru, Joe Miller. And what an interesting topic today, Joe. How to start a career in sales at any age. So I just want to toss it over to you. Can you do a quick, give a little quick background for some of our listening audience and our viewers today about where you came from, what you're doing now, and what's happening.
You know, I'm glad Dan took an old guy to do this with. Crispin, I've been doing this for a long time, man. 37 years of selling. Almost all of it's in medical sales. I didn't know how I was going to start. I was at LSU, going to school, drinking a lot of beer and chasing girls and not getting much done academically. And then one day came out, saw a friend of mine in sales for Duracell batteries and said, that's what I want to do. And I was actually working in a lab in New Orleans and saw a lot of salespeople coming in and wanted a lab job. And that's how I got started 37 years ago. So yeah, that's how I got started. And I've been fortunate. I've had some great mentors along the way that I've worked with. I've had some great sales teams. Like I said, I've carried the bag, and I've had 80-person sales teams I've run. So I've kind of run a gamut of sales.
That's just great. So, Joel, let me ask you, because we're talking a little bit about, figuring out what type of career you'd like to have or what that looks like in your world and starting at any age. So let's talk about a little bit about, either entry level or if you've been doing this for a long time. I mean, how important is it to choose an industry that you really love or that you really like, that you're really interested in?
Yeah, you got to like what you're selling. I've been with companies where I didn't like the stuff I sold and I got out. I used my background from college to go into medical because that's where I was heading. But, I think you got to find what you really like to sell. If you like selling, first of all, you got to do that. But then you got to find what that thing is you like selling. Because I think when you like it, I know this is kind of a rehashed phrase, but when you like it, you have a passion for it. You're going to get more involved with it. You're going to learn it more, and you're going to be better at it. You're just going to be significantly better at it. And that I see salespeople all the time selling stuff. You can just tell. I mean, you just tell their energy level. They're not in the game. They're there. Who knows why they are? I mean, because if they're full commission guy, they're not making any money either. So, it's one of those things where I think you really gotta like the profession and you gotta like what you're selling in the sales profession.
Yeah, I think that's so critical, and you got to be passionate about it, right, Joe? I mean, you got to have some passion and some excitement about what you're doing. And listen, you and I have been around for a minute or so, of maybe around the block a couple different times. And I remember those times, man, where it would just take every ounce of energy for me to get out of bed that morning. And it's just like, man,
Oh yeah.
it's just like, I got to go to this godforsaken job again, like this one, and just try to put on a good face and leave it all at the door. And and I remember, like what I'm doing now, which is I wake up before the alarm even goes off, right? And I'm ready to go and start my day and do something different and really make an impact. And so I think passion and emotion, like all of that, is so important, so important.
The job impacts you more than you think it does. We think we impact the job impacts us too. So I mean, like you're talking about, when you can get out of bed in the morning before the alarm clock goes off, and you roll out of bed and you go, man, I can't wait. I can't wait to go to work today. I can't wait to talk to people today. I can't wait to sell something today.
Yeah,
that's a whole different game. I've been there, believe me. I've rolled out of bed and went, man, I don't even want to go do this right now.
Right.
But I had family to support, so I did it. But it's a different, like now. Even my wife would go, why? It's like Saturday morning, like you're up at 5:30, you're working. I went, I just love it. I did the whole different, when you're in that, I've been with sales teams like that. I don't know if you've been associated with that. I haven't been with many of them, but I can tell you, when you're with the sales team, my friend and I call it lightning in a bottle. When you get right people together, working together, and it's magical. It's just, there's nothing like it.
You're right. You're so
This
right.
is amazing, guys. And so, just as a fly on the wall, I've always thought that, I believe you can learn from anybody, no matter what age they are. I don't care if they're 85 years old and they've had a history in any sort of business, or they're fresh out of college or high school. I learned stuff from my sons. It's just like, you've got to be open. You've got to be able to have respect for everyone and be able to soak that in and be able to learn from it. And, Chris, both you and Joe talked about the passion for something, and that's going to, sort of drive you to be able to do these things. But I think there's a lot of people that have, like you said, Joe, you had to provide for your family. So you were in a position where you were just like, hit the alarm, I got to go in. And I think there's a lot of people out there, and they don't know how to stop and be able to be driven to find that passion, so they can get to maybe, where you got as far as waking up and saying, yes, I have to do this. I have to, but I get to do these things. So how, just knowing, from your wisdom, from your experience on these things, how do you graduate from that? How do you get from, I'm in a job right now, and this is not my passion, but I still need to provide. So how do I get to a point to where I can start and then be driven to work on it?
Joe, you want to
go? Yeah, I'll go. I'm going to take a little different slant. This is a really recent thing for me. Is I'm not sure you find your passion as much as it finds you. Mm-hmm. I actually learned from a guy, and I started really thinking about it. Like, is that true? And I know in my case it was true, but because you have the discipline, I hate that word, but it's true. I don't always like this one either. But the discipline to do the work as well as you could do it, even when you hated it, I think that puts you in a different perspective to find, if you want to say find your passion. But I think over time it finds you. I mean, I know exactly what I like to do. I like doing this. I didn't think I was ever going to be a sales guy. Even when I was doing it for a while, I didn't think I would stay in it. But I did, because I really, really, when I got down to it, it's what I really, really loved. But I developed that over time. It didn't happen. I didn't come out of school, with a prospect and go, well, I think I'll be a sales guy, and that's what I really wanted to do, because it wasn't. That developed over time.
Yeah, I think it's so, Chris, it's so interesting, because part of the answer to that question is really just, what's your level of happiness in what you're doing today, right now, right at this moment. And, a lot of it is just, and I get it, man. I mean, you touched on it earlier. you've got a mortgage, you've got car payments, you've got a cell phone bill, like you've got all these things, man. I mean, and I get it. You're up against that, and you're trying to decide, okay, do I just go to my job, or do I really, follow my heart and do something that I love? But I can promise you, I've been there so many times that, if you're doing something that you love, the money will come. It's easy to say that, but it's hard to make that transition. And what that means to me is you got to work on the 6 inches between your ears. That's the biggest piece. That's the biggest part, that you got to look to change that dynamic, conceptually.
Yeah. And that's what you do every day. I mean, that you're changing, it kind of goes all back to the fundamentals at the end of the day, Chris. I mean, Crispin's teaching sales, not even just fundamentals, but advanced sales techniques too. And that once you get yourself to a level of expertise, you will become passionate. I'm telling you, I think if you keep climbing the ladder and keep trying to go, see if that passion doesn't reach you versus you trying to find it. But you've got to want to get better at whatever you're doing.
That's right. Great advice. And for those that are watching, and we see the numbers out there, you've got some incredible sales experts who are here to talk about how to start a business at any age. So, Crispin, I'll roll this back over to you. I'm soaking this up and taking notes. Maybe I'll just watch the replay because it's rolling fast, these nuggets.
Yeah. So listen, here's another thing, Joe. Let's talk to our viewers and listeners a little bit about how important it is to leverage your network. I mean, you and I have been around for a while, but how important is it to leverage your network?
It's the most important thing I do. But I've been able to develop that network for 37 years. You just don't get one overnight.
Say it again. It's the most important thing that you do.
It is. I have a product. I could pick up the phone and call someone. It happened yesterday. I tell you exactly what happened. A group came to us and said, "Hey, we'd like you to sell this widget." Doesn't matter what the widget was. I said, "I don't know. Looks interesting. Let me pick up the phone and call the widget expert." I knew who he was. He was in my network. Boom. He had 5 things to talk about already. Like he went to the website. He could go, boom, boom, boom. I need these 5 things. I need to know these 5 things. I said, "Can you get on a call with this guy?" Yeah. Boom, boom. I mean, that is the network. That is the advantage of the network. Absolutely. I mean, it's so critical. So you're going to develop, not to rant on here, but you got to develop that, keep developing and keep your network engaged. LinkedIn's a great place to do that. Pick up the phone, send them a card, do something. I mean, if you keep that network, Crispin, you hit on such a big topic for me because my network is so vital to me selling.
I know it is. And I know that's just part of who you are. That's just part of your DNA. Right. And so, and it's also remember, every person that you engage with is a prospect. Right. And so if you think of it that way, if you're leaving people in your wake in destruction, I mean, then you're not building a good name for yourself, for your company, for your network. I mean, you have got to, and I treat every single person I engage with every single day like a prospect. And what do? I listen with the intent to listen. I don't listen with the intent to reply, right? I listen. I want them to tell me their story. I'm on my way. We're on our way to go pick up my son because he went to a friend's house yesterday and just had a little play date after school, right? And my wife says, "Listen, don't do your sales thing." And I go, "What? What are you talking about?" She's like, "Don't do your get in and get out. You're going to ask a bunch of questions. You're going to get them talking. We're going to be there for a half an hour. You're going to learn everything about him. Don't do your sales thing." And I go, I don't know how to do it any differently. Like, right. I mean, I don't know how to do it any differently. It just becomes part of your DNA. And if you're not doing that every single day, you're doing it wrong, man. You're doing it wrong.
How many times, Crispin, did you do that and found a connection to somebody else?
Yeah.
Often. Yeah. I mean, I tell you, having grown up in New Orleans was very much like this. I know somebody who knows somebody that can get it done. You're not more than 3 in New Orleans. You're never more than 3 levels of connections away from anybody. And it was always like that. I guess maybe I grew up that way, but it certainly worked over the long haul in selling. I can tell you that.
Sure, sure. And let's talk. So let's shift gears and go back to kind of the main topic, which is, starting a career in sales, or like keeping, starting a career, continuing a career in sales, and what that looks like. I mean, how, and what's your view on this one, Joe? I mean, how important is it for you to be, adaptable? I mean, for you to, for you really to be an agent of change, how important is that?
It is. The bar is very low. I will say that. I see. Yeah, it's the truth. I mean, it's if it's customer service or selling, I find the bar to be very low today. And I've seen this just trying to sell a house. I called several realtors, and this is a market that's changing, right? It's not as robust as it used to be just 3 months ago. You couldn't get a call back. I was amazed. I was just amazed. So if you're getting into selling, get in it to get in it. Because otherwise you are going to roll out of bed in the morning. You're going to go, I hate this job. But if you really dig in and get trained and learn how to do it right, it's a fabulous world.
I love
it. But the bar is very low. The bar is super low. Anybody can get in if they want to.
You know what feels really good? Helping people. That feels great, right?
Yeah, it does.
You open a door for somebody's having some trouble, and you pick up something for them, something simple, right? Feels good.
Yep.
It's an instinct that a lot of people have when they see something, and it feels really good. And the ghost of Dan Jourdan is on the show, but he always says, if you want to be a better salesperson, first be a better person. And so, if you want to be a better person, you're going to be a great salesperson, because that's what this is, right? This is helping people. This is identifying problems that someone has, and you can solve them with the product that you have. And it's a little easier when you love that product, according to Joe Miller.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would say anything we say from this point forward is nothing. If you take what Chris just said, write it down 10 times, you will get everything you need from this stream. I guarantee you. That's the key. It's, they always say, there's 10 commandments. Which one is the most important? I don't know. But that is a real key topic that you just hit on, Chris, is that, man, you gotta help people. You gotta want to help people. That's what it comes down to. Yeah. And here's the other thing. People know that. They know when you're trying to be a transaction or when you're trying to be someone that can help.
Yes.
They know.
That's exactly right. You're exactly right. I mean, and I go into these, Chris, to your point, I go into these companies and I help them lay foundational sales process. I help them to build teams. I help them to grow, but it's stuff I love doing. Like I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And it's, right. The payoff is not the compensation. All right. And in full transparency, I make a great living, but it's not the compensation. It's knowing and looking the ownership or the leadership in the eyes and saying, and them finally realizing, wow, we've done something that I thought we could grow the company. I didn't realize it was going to happen this fast. I didn't realize the impact it was going to have on the culture. I didn't realize how even where I thought we were going to go, that we're going to surpass that. It is fun, to watch that happen. It is fun to help people in that way, and the impact that you have on the leadership, on the actual employees, on their families. I mean, it's awesome.
and none of the stuff you talked about. I'm sorry. This is already a better show than any of the ones Dan's ever done, and I know he's going to watch this later, or I'll take that clip and send it to him. So I'm sorry, Joe, I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to say, the topic is, getting in sales at any age. What we just talked about is ageless. You can be any age and do exactly what we're talking about.
That's right. That's exactly right. Joe, so shifting gears for just a second, if you were to say, these are the top 3 things, if you need to focus on these top 3 things to be successful, maybe in your career in sales or running your own business, what comes to mind?
Ooh, it's like the 10 Commandments thing, right? So I'm gonna, and this isn't because you're on here, Crispin, but I think you have to. It's an educational process. It's a selling is a learned skill. And people think I'm an extrovert. I am not. I'm a complete introvert. I'd rather sit back here and read a book and do this. But I love being with people. And I think the number one thing is you got to want to be better. I am, and right now I am like trying to get better at LinkedIn, better at digital communications, better at video, all the stuff that I'm not really good at. I'm great at picking up the phone and talking to people, but I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to use people like Crispin to get better. That is a desire you got to have in this business. The second one, you just got to have the desire. It's the same thing. I think there's a reason that Napoleon Hill put that as the number one. The first chapter is desire. You have to have a want and a desire to do this. Is there a financial, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? Potentially, yeah. I mean, most salespeople I see who are good make really good money, better than the average bear by far. So you got to want it. You got to train for it. Maybe it's reverse. You got to want it. You got to train for it, and then you got to do it. And that, to me, still today, after all the communication stuff we have, video, everything else is picking up the phone.
Mm-hmm.
You got to pick up the phone and call somebody.
Yeah.
And that is, again, that's a learned skill.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And so there's a whole piece that we've talked about, Joe, that's in the training program, that we teach, and it's called IR. It's identity and role. And you mentioned it just earlier, and I tell this quick story about like Iron Man, and I don't know if there's any Avengers fans out there, but when I found out that Tony Stark was Robert Downey Jr. was only playing the role of Tony Stark, I was crushed. Like I thought Robert Downey Jr. had these cool cars and this big house like built into the side of the cliff, and he could fly. He had the suit that could fly, and I was just absolutely crushed by that, right? And I say that because in all seriousness, if you know anything about Robert Downey Jr., he is very private. He's a very private person. Like he doesn't even like to, even when he's got new movies coming out, he doesn't like to do like those prep interviews for the movies. Like he's a very quiet. And in the, we talk about DISC also. Yep. And if you don't know DISC, look it up, DISC. But in the DISC, he's like an S, like C. I mean, very quiet, very calculated, very good listener, doesn't really like the spotlight. Yeah. And so I always ask, and I'll ask you this, Chris, I ask you this question. I asked this during training. I say, so if when the lights came on and they said action, right? And Robert Downey Jr. needed to turn into Iron Man at that moment. And he said that he was his true identity, which is that SC, that quiet type, that shy person, doesn't like to be in the limelight, then how successful would he have been convincing you that he's Tony Stark?
You're asking me how successful he would be?
Yeah. If he was, instead of, if he was his true identity, which is this quiet kind of private guy versus, this outgoing, outrageous, D kind of behavior type.
Well, if you're Robert Downey Jr., you're very successful at doing that, because you've been an actor. But he didn't wake up and become Tony Stark, right? He put in the work and the training, and he failed, and he learned from it over and over and over and over again. Did I get the answer right, Chris?
You got it right. I'm not.
Okay.
I don't have to throw
Yeah.
you out. I don't have to throw you out of my training. So you got it right. So
That was
you're
close.
absolutely, yeah, I know that was a close one, wasn't it? So you're absolutely right. So that's what we need to, part of what we need to learn is if you're really committed to wanting to go into a career in sales, then you have to adapt, and you have to adapt your behavior. And that's the hard part that Joe's talking about. I mean, if you are a natural SC and, you don't really like being the center of attention and you don't like being in the limelight, there are times that you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone and you're going to have to act that way to be successful. And so, it's just a really interesting concept that you bring there and it's all built into that IR theory that we talk about, frequently.
Kristen, what's the, I'm trying to remember the quote by David Sandler. Sales is a Broadway play put on by a psychologist.
That's right.
Was that the quote?
Played by a psychiatrist. That's right.
There's a lot of truth to that, man.
That's exactly
because
right.
What Kristen is talking about is using different personality types, how to work with those. That's really that's the psychology part. The Tony Stark thing is the acting part. So they all come together.
So what would you say then? Sales is part acting for sure, but we talked about being truly a good person, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can you act like a good person?
That's a good question. I mean, that's a good question. How can you be a genuine fake, right? Right.
That's a better headline. That's more clickable. Good job.
Yeah, that's right. That's the next show.
How to be a genuine fake. I love it.
So I can still be Joe Miller. I can still turn on a personality of Joe Miller that's legit. It doesn't mean it has to be turned on all the time. And it can't be. I can't. If I had to do this all day, I would be completely exhausted. I mean, literally, when I'd go to sales meetings where I'm listening intently all day and talking and interacting, I'm literally, at the end of the day, I am exhausted, just physically whipped. So you have to be yourself, but it doesn't mean you necessarily have to, just like the Tony Stark example, right? Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man. He made Iron Man. He is, but he crafted that character out of his, from himself. He's not, I don't think he's faking it. Just like salespeople don't have to fake it. They can be themselves, but still put on an acting persona to the client. Because let's face it, the client wants an experience. They don't want Joe Miller who's reading a book. They want somebody who's engaged with them and excited to be with them and wants to help them. That's the acting part I'm talking about. So it's not necessarily being a fake, but you got to amp up your energy level if you're going to be talking with people.
Yeah, I'm going to go a different way with that, Joe, just a little bit. You have to be passionate and compassionate about your prospect. And
that's a good one. Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that you have to be strong enough to know that your story doesn't make a damn bit of difference to your prospect. and because we all have such a compelling, we have such a compelling desire to tell our own story. And you have to be able to say, Joe Miller, Chris, whoever else, you got to put that person in the trunk of the car and say, your stuff is not important right now. The only thing that's important is what the prospect is telling me. And so you have to feel comfortable in that role. And then you have to ask good questions and you have to listen intently, and I mean, think about this. I mean, Joe, I know you're 55, 56 years old. I get that. Like that's, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
He's being nice. He's being a good person.
In your 55 or 56 years of life, I want to ask you this question. How many times have you ever been in a conversation with somebody, and when you walked away from meeting that person for the very first time, you said to yourself, man, that person really gets me. Like, I don't know what it is, but that person really understands me. They get me. like we're connected in some way. It's very odd, but you know, I can't explain it. But that person is like me, like he or she is one of us, right?
Yep.
In your 56 years of life, Joe, how many times has that ever happened to you?
A lot, actually.
A lot.
It has a lot. You know, not every time, obviously, but more than you think it might. You know, where I mean, I've read statistics. I don't know how accurate they are. That within the first, 15 seconds, people are making a determination about, if they like you or don't like you, or ever going to buy from you. That may be true. I don't know, but I had a number of conversations with people where I connected on it's the first conversation of it. And here's the crazy thing: I've been able to do it on the phone too.
Yeah,
that to me is even more miraculous in a way, because I mean, you lose all this,
right.
You don't have all you have is your tonality and the words. That's it. You take away all the, your body language, your expressions, all that. But and I'll kind of flip this back to you, Crispin. How many times did you know after that meeting, after that first interaction, that you are probably going to do business with that person?
Yeah, I knew right away. Right away. Yeah.
And how many? Let me flip that around. How many times did you have a conversation that didn't go well, that you knew that wasn't going to happen?
Oh yeah, many times also. many times.
Yeah.
And so it's making. So my point to that is this: is that if you go into every engagement. And when I said I changed the definition of prospect, because everybody I engage with every single day is my prospect. But if you go into every engagement thinking, I'm going to let this person tell me their story, I'm going to intently listen to them. I want them to walk away from this engagement thinking to themselves, wow, I haven't had a conversation like that with anybody in a really, really long time. And that's what drives you. Like, that's what you truly feel in your heart of hearts, that you're humanistic enough to want that to happen, then you're at the right place. Then you're at the right place.
I've got a question for both of you guys. Do you ever, when you're approaching a person or having an engagement with person, I mean, whether like Chris, what you said, everyone is a prospect sort of thing, but have you ever gone with the mindset of, what if I make a friend? Like, they technically, this could be a quote unquote prospect. This could be someone that's in, I eventually could have as a client or whatever. But what if I made a really good friend? I mean, what would you guys say to that?
I would say you're looking at it right now. I mean, this guy, we started engaging with one another because he came to us looking for services. And I mean, I'm not too proud to say it. I mean, Joe and I fell in love with each other. It's easy to do. You've got somebody that's like him, that has the work ethic, has the desire to want to learn, is open-minded. I mean, this guy
wears a cool hoodie too. I mean, you got it, the fashion sense too.
This guy's going to be a success no matter what he does. Whatever he does, he's going to be successful at, because he gives 100% in everything that he does.
Man, that feels good. Thanks.
That's good stuff. This is a love fest.
It's a love fest, man.
It's taking the Dan Jourdan show from here to here. It's off of my screen.
Dan's gonna love that. He's gonna love hearing that too. Yeah.
Hey, we got to raise the bar on this thing. This is how we do it. Get him off and then get him back on. That's how that works.
That's exactly right.
Nice sales tactic right there.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, let me get. I want to answer your question about the friend thing.
Yeah.
I've never gone into it thinking like that, but that's a great way to think about it. Now, I have made friends I've never done business with. So
what's wrong with that?
I think the mentality, nothing at all. It's great.
Exactly.
I mean, because just like we were talking on. I mean, I don't plug them in a network just to plug them in, but it's somebody who's in my network now that may be able to help me, or even more importantly, help somebody else that I know in my network. That's the key of the network to me. It's not just helping me to do something, but helping maybe somebody to, somebody who knows somebody. That's the work I really like.
Yeah.
It's working. But that is a great way to think about it. I've never thought about it before, but that's a great way to think about
zero expectations, just being a good person and helping someone out. And I understand, like, there's a fine line between helping someone out and being taken advantage of, because time is money, and those of us who consult are not cheap sometimes. But there's nothing wrong with helping someone out and not thinking, it's the go-giver mentality, right, Bob Burr?
Yeah.
With helping someone out with zero expectations that there's a tit for tat, that there is something that you're going to get by giving, right? Because you never know. You never know when something comes back around that you did 2 years ago, a person that you met, connected. It goes back to what you guys are talking about, is the importance of networking. It's amazing.
Yep. Right. Great comment and great salespeople are the same person. They just don't do the same thing in the end to the person. Because when we're talking about this, you're building a level of trust with somebody that you could really take advantage of. I mean, you could really, really hurt somebody. But when you go into it, then that's the con man, the confidence man, right? He's able to gain your trust. So as a good salesperson, it's what you do when the time comes at that moment of a decision, when you're either going to say, I have the right thing for you and we should do this, or I don't have the right thing for you. Let's find something that'll work for you. That's the difference between the salesperson and the con man. But they both do the same thing. They both have to gain trust from the person that they're talking to or stealing from. Now and that's why most people, I think, when they say salesperson, they say con man or, thief, because they got hooked because they were able to give their trust to someone and they got hurt.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, it's such a power, and it just reminds me about going back to DISC, Joe. I mean, when you really start to use these, this method of DISC, and you start to unpack the behavior type of the individual that you're engaging with, and then you're mirroring and matching, and you're doing all these other things to try to align yourself with them. And because people buy from those that they like, that they trust, and that are like them. And so if you can be more like your prospect, then they're going to trust you more quickly, and then the percentage of them buying from you goes way up. And if they like you, then that's all part of how you would manage this process. And so
it's very powerful. It's a very powerful way to connect with people.
And
I mean, I just got taught, and I've been doing this for a long time. I really just got taught DISC about 2 years ago. And it really, I mean, even though I've seen some other psychological type profiles, I really like DISC. It's simple, and it keeps it, you pretty much can pin down somebody after talking to them for a few minutes. You can pretty much gauge where they fall most of the time, and then be able to talk directly to that type of person.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. And just being able to align yourself more closely with them, with your tonality, the way you're talking with them. If you're talking with a high I, they're going to be fast, they're going to be quick, and the D's are going to be quick to decision, and the S's, you're going to have to slow down. I mean, even when I talk about S's, my tonality changes. I slow down my path. Like there's just certain things like that you do, naturally, when you really start to embed this into your sales process.
Yep. And those are the hardest people for me to interact with. It's wrong.
I'm sure that's true. Well, I know we're winding down here, Joe. Hey, I wanted to take a note from our friend James Lipton. He passed recently, and I just loved, that Inside the Actor's Studio. I just love that. And if you're not familiar with it, especially some of our younger viewers, maybe go to YouTube and pull them up. But I'll just say this, I want to ask a kind of a question set of you, Joe, and just have you kind of walk through that with me and tell me what your thoughts are, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, sure.
So, Joe, the first one, and I'll never be able to deliver this like James does, but what's your favorite word?
My favorite word. I love words, so this is going to be a tough one. I think the one that comes through is compassion. I think that's the one I think about probably more than anything else.
Compassion. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Thank you for that, Joe. And what's your least favorite word?
Power, I think, is my least favorite word.
Power.
Or the connotation of power, anyway.
Interesting. Okay, Joe, here's one for personal for our viewers. What turns you on? What excites you?
I love connecting with people. I love doing this kind of stuff. I could do it all day. Like I said, at the end of the day, I'd be really tired, but this interacting with human beings is where I get all the juice from.
That's awesome.
A few minutes ago is I want to know their story, because everybody's got one. Everybody's got a story.
I love it. And let's go the opposite direction. What turns you off? What don't you like?
From a business perspective, it's taking advantage of people, just brutally taking advantage of people. Here's a corollary to that: not doing what you say you're going to do. I just really irks me.
That's right. Living up to your commitments. I love it. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
What sound or noise do you love, Joe?
I love jazz, man. I'm a smooth jazz kind of. I can usually pipe that in all day back in the background and just listen to that all day.
Yeah, it's just awesome. I love
like the
it.
Weather Channel. Isn't the Weather Channel like the greatest smooth jazz channel of all time?
I think you're right.
And now your daily forecast with the Rippingtons jamming. Okay.
Right, exactly.
I love it. And then what sound or noise do you hate?
I don't know how to tell you what the sound is, but I know it's a sound my dog makes when he's in pain. It's a high screech, and it sets the other three of them off. So I hate that sound with a passion.
Yeah, that's great. And the last one, if you weren't a salesperson, Joe, if you weren't a sales guy, and this wasn't inherent in who you are, what other profession would you have wanted to attempt?
I would have been a Porsche mechanic. That would have been the other thing. But like high end, have my own shop, high end, rebuild Porsche, restoration, old Porsche kind of shop. It'd have to be Porsche, but mostly, high end, not only high end, but old like 80s German sports cars. That would have been my thing.
High end, as if there is no other end for a Porsche mechanic.
That's true.
Right?
Right.
Like
Good
not
point.
a low end Porsche mechanic. It's got to be high end. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
I want the cheap Porsches. I want the ones that.
I love it.
Every time you take your Porsche and it's $1,000, you can bet.
Right.
Just to do the tire rotation. What are you talking about?
But the shop I'm talking about, where you can eat off the floor and all the tools in the right spot, that kind of place,
Listen, this has been great fun, guys, and I really appreciate it. Joe, thanks for being on, and Chris asking me to come and host. It's just been super fun, and I really
guys, I'm telling you, this is the best show ever. I mean, Dan's when Dan watches this, he's got. I mean, the bar has been. I mean, it's off the screen, so it's been
Awesome.
Amazing. I've got more notes than I know what to do with.
I was thinking Dan was going to be on here. I'm like, what questions coming next, man? Oh, where he's coming from.
That's exactly right. That's right. Okay, Chris. Thanks, Joe. Thank you, Chris.
All right, good stuff, everyone. Thanks for joining. And I guess in the words of Dan, you're the best. He's Joe, and he's Chris, and I'm Chris. Go get him today.